Hi everyone, welcome back to Aspergers from the Inside. You're here with Paul. I make weekly videos sharing the human side of autism, so make sure you hit subscribe to get the latest content. So in this week's Patron's Choice video, our topic is on masking, specifically how do I take off the mask if I want to. So we can identify that sometimes putting on the mask is a self-protection mechanism, which can be useful sometimes, but very often what we're trying to do is find healthy ways to take that mask off. So in this video, I'm going to share a 3-step process to start learning how to take the mask off and bring more of your authentic self forward in a healthy way that still allows us to stay safe in situations. So the first thing to note about a mask is that it protects us from the situation. So the reason that I bring a mask and put on a mask in the first place is because I want to be accepted in that situation, and I feel like if I brought my authentic self, I wouldn't be able to do that successfully in the situation. So simply dropping the mask altogether might not necessarily be a very productive thing to do. That said, if I've worn the mask all the time my entire life, then the message that it tells me is that I have to wear the mask, otherwise I won't fit in. If I don't wear the mask, I'll have the full rejection of my friends and family and society, because they only accept the mask. And if I am no longer wearing it, then that means that I'm somehow inadequate and I won't be able to have that acceptance that I'm actually looking for. And the really damaging part about wearing a mask for too long is that I slowly start to believe it myself. It becomes less and less clear, am I deliberately putting on a mask? Is this really me? If my mask is accepted, is that because I'm becoming the person that I'm projecting to the world and therefore it's becoming more authentic? Or am I going further and further away from myself? Is the message that I'm actually telling myself that the real me is inadequate? If that's the message, that my mask is telling me that the real me is inadequate and I therefore need to pretend to be someone else, that is really damaging for your own self-esteem. So with that in mind, the first step to slowly, safely taking the mask off is to find out for yourself who you are and what you want when you're alone. This is the safest environment where I can safely experiment with what would it be like if I dropped the mask in front of myself. What would it be like if I embraced certain aspects of myself that I feel that I need to hide in front of others? This is not a small process. This is a very challenging, courageous thing to do, to honestly look at the parts of myself that I would prefer not to be there and embrace them and identify them as truly part of myself. I might not like the fact that I'm very sensitive to certain sounds. I might not like the fact that I need to isolate myself sometimes to recharge. I might not like the fact that I don't share the same interests as a lot of people around me. But when I can start to embrace those aspects of myself, even when I'm alone, and this is why sometimes the autistic person who knows how to go off by themselves and really indulge in either their special interests or their coping mechanisms or their ways to recharge, that can be a really healthy first step to at least acknowledging to myself that there is something that I was masking. and at least then I'm starting to understand who I am behind the mask, who it is that I would eventually like to share with the world. So that's step number one, working on accepting myself while I'm alone. The next step after that is to share some of those things with someone you trust. This might be a family member or a close friend, or your intimate partner potentially, someone who you think is likely to also accept this part of yourself. I note here that sometimes other people are even more accepting of us than we are of ourselves. So it might be really difficult for me to accept my own limitations, to accept that I can work for 2 days a week and then I feel burnt out for the rest of the time. Like, that feels like a defect. It feels like something I should fix within myself. And someone from the outside can look at that with compassion and help me to embrace it for myself. So if there is a person that you think is likely to treat your true self understandingly and compassionately, and accept the parts of yourself that seem difficult to accept, that is a good second step to sharing more of your authentic self with other people and the world. Eventually, as we're doing more of this, as I'm feeling more confident in myself about who I am, and as I'm feeling more confident explaining myself to another human being, eventually I'm going to want to be public about that at some point. This, again, is no small thing. The phrase coming out comes to mind. It does not necessarily need to be a big, showy, I need to tell the whole world right now kind of event. It could be, I'm going to slowly let this true self be more and more seen in the world in certain aspects. So I've simplified this process into 3 steps of yourself, one other close person, and then the world. But really, it's much more of a gradual process, especially this 3rd step, where I don't need to broadcast my autism from the rooftops. What I can start to do is acknowledge that when someone I don't know asks me, maybe I'll tell them. How does that feel? Actually, ironically, sometimes it's the people who know us the least that are more able to accept things without judgment. I'm going to be really judgmental of myself. I might be a bit perfectionistic about my own tendencies, and I have very strong desires of how I would like to be, and therefore not being how I would like to be is really hard to accept on a personal level, because I'm so personally invested in this. Someone else who doesn't know me, has just met me for 2 minutes, and hears some curious, interesting fact about me, like maybe it's a special interest, or maybe they hear how I have a power nap after the gym in the morning before I start my workday. And it's much easier for someone who doesn't know me at all to think, oh, that's an interesting fact. No judgment whatsoever. So sometimes the further someone is away from you, the easier it is for them to accept you without judgment. That said, not everyone in the whole world is non-judgmental, obviously. So it helps to share with people who are likely to understand, who are likely to give you positive feedback. So if I'm telling someone I'm autistic in person, for example, then they're less likely to say something really mean as if I tell my whole team at work on the internet and then someone who has never actually met me hears it and then says something carelessly that just rolls off the tongue, and they didn't really think twice about their words because they don't realize it has a real effect. So telling people in person makes sure there's a little bit more accountability for how someone receives the message and gives it back to you. Broadcasting things to the entire world on the internet, whether that's on social media or other things like that, is naturally going to attract people who have very strong opinions that are not based on anything. They've never met you. Their comments have nothing to do with you personally, and that can be really hurtful when people say things that are ill-considered and they don't really have any grounds for reality. So with that in mind, what we're trying to do is bring more of our authentic selves slowly, gradually. It's not a black and white process of I've got the mask on and now I'm going to drop it. It's more a process of I have a filter. It might be a better metaphor. There's a filter in front of me, and I want to let more and more of myself show through that filter, so that what the world sees, so that what I see, so that what other people see becomes more and more, closer and closer every day, a little bit more like the authentic self that I would like to be. So and I can't emphasize enough how much that the gradual nature of this process helps to keep it safe. If I look at something within myself and I think that is way too scary, I am not ready to embrace that part of myself yet. Maybe I'm not ready for that part. Maybe I need to look somewhere else and focus on embracing a different aspect of myself. If I try and share a certain aspect of myself with my partner, for example, and they don't understand, that's okay. I can still work on this without going too far in one direction and feeling the rejection of sharing a large part of myself with another person, or even with myself, and it being too much for the other person to handle. So this is especially true when we become more and more public about our true selves. It becomes, in a way, it becomes more vulnerable because I am letting the world see more of myself. But at the same time, it's also less vulnerable because the more public I am about my situation and who I am, the less secrets there are to use against me. So if I've told only my best friend that I'm autistic, then it's going to be, I'm going to feel like it's dangerous for that person to tell anyone else, because what if other people find out too? Whereas for me personally, I'm on the internet, I've got a YouTube channel, I work in this space, this is my profession, talking, sharing the human side of autism. There is no way that someone could use being autistic against me as if it was some kind of secret thing, secret skeleton in my closet somewhere, right? So the reason I want to finish on this is because there's a huge empowering aspect to dropping the mask and knowing that your authentic self is out there and it's not something that people can criticize. When I was wearing a mask, to the extent that I am wearing a mask, I feel like an imposter. I feel like there is a chance that somebody is going to see through this and I'm going to be in trouble. I'm going to be found out. Imposter syndrome, sometimes they call it. So the more I am bringing of my authentic self to the world, the easier it is, the less stressful it is, because there's nothing about my authentic self that the world can really use against me, because it won't be true. You could call me any name under the sun that's not true at all, and I'm not about to get offended by that because I know that it's not true. Whereas if I'm putting up a mask and someone says, you're not really something, that can really hurt sometimes, because I really wish that I were successful. I really wish that I had more, that I could overcome some of my limitations sometimes. So when they point out my limitations that I do not fully accept, then that can be really challenging. Okay, so maybe we should end it there. This has been a Patron's Choice video, so thanks to everyone who voted for this topic. If you'd like to have your say in next month's Patron's Choice video, then you can become a cup of coffee supporter of this channel for less than $1 a week. So thanks again for watching and for suggesting this topic, and I'll see you again next week. Bye.